And if I might
Yes.
preface Laura's remarks, I'd rather not call this a budget because it's a working document along the way towards a proposed budget that you'll see. But I know the council's been interested in how this is developing, and so what you'll see is a document that isn't balanced but reflects what departments feel they need going into the new year or the new budget year and the projection of revenues. You will hear from department heads in subsequent meetings about their individual budgets, so we can talk more in detail about the justification for some of the things that are in the budget from each department at that point in time. So tonight, the idea is to introduce it, get some initial feedback, but not to belabor too much the fact that this is not balanced at this point, but to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at today as we move in the next few weeks to balancing it.
And also, before you get going, all these documents are on our website. That's correct? So the public can look at anything we've been doing towards the budget. The timeline and any material are on the City of Auburn's website. Thank you.
Okay, just to piggyback on what Doug said, is that this is a first draft of the budget. It is not a proposal from the city manager or myself. It includes department head requests. So items that department heads may want that haven't been in past budgets. And the reason that we didn't exclude them is because we wanted to show you what department heads are requesting. We wanted you to see what we put together before we actually get to a draft or a proposed budget. Another item is the CSEA contract has not yet been settled. That could impact the budget. It will impact the budget. How much, I'm not sure, but we will see when it's settled. Many estimates that we include in the budget, we don't have yet. Health insurance, liability insurance, workers' comp, final retirement system estimates, interest rates on short-term debt, we won't know until we go and refund our bands. There's also revenue estimates that'll be a lot more accurate when we get closer to the end of the year, and items that just will take a little bit longer to get closer to accurate numbers for next year. So we will go through all of these line by line, compare them to the actual this year, and adjust accordingly. What happens this time of year also is that department heads say, oh, hey, remember, I forgot to put this in, or so that can also happen. All right, so starting with the general fund, in the column right here, you can see that we have just less than $800,000 worth of a deficit or a potential gap. I'd like everyone to keep in mind, again, that this has a lot of requests in it that potentially will be cut before the actual proposed budget comes out. You can see an increase in expenditures as is expected when department heads are requesting whatever they want to request for their departments. Our debt service is down just very slightly, and our transfers to other funds are relatively close to last year. There's a pretty big percent increase, but the actual number isn't all that different. If you look down to our revenues, a lot of them are pretty close to where they were before. Sales and use tax is up about 5%, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the revenue section of my notes. So I wanted to make a highlight of items that were different this year versus last year, additional requests or changes that have been incorporated into this draft. The mayor and council secretary has been included as a full-time instead of a part-time employee. The city clerk and records retention functions have been collapsed into one. There are no budgetary changes when this happened. It was just kind of a cleaning up of a small account. Corporation counsel in this budget has been made a full-time employee, and due to this, the services were decreased, so the department cost is actually the same. Police has increased by 1 assistant chief and 3 patrol officers. This is around a $300,000 increase over their prior year, over their budget if they hadn't included these 4 personnel.
Would you say it was 300,000 increase? And going back to why don't you break these down for us? The mayor and city council, that would be an increase of what? Do you have those numbers?
About 31,000.
31,000?
Yep.
And records retention, you said you were just cleaning up
Yep. The city clerk and records retention and corporation council all have a net zero effect.
but we've lost a half a person in
This was finished before that unfortunate incident happened.
Your calculations were done before Andy's passing?
Yes, so that is something that will have to be updated in the next.
So you'll get the new numbers out to us on this one here.
Yep, they will be included in the proposed budget. Street lighting and signal maintenance. Electricity was decreased by about 45,000. We're seeing the effects of energy efficient lighting and the replacement of old bulbs. The fire department's requested $30,000 for vehicles. Code enforcement has increased their demolition of unsafe buildings by $50,000 to $100,000. Public Works admin added $14,000 for snowplow tracking software and hardware.
Doug, I could just ask you a question on this. Are you talking about putting GPS on the trucks or?
Yes. We received so many complaints about the trucks not getting on certain streets that there are now systems available that we can put on the trucks. And we could also expand it to our garbage trucks so we know exactly where they've been and we can share that information with anybody that's interested.
In the Parks Department, you'll see that the salaries have decreased, and this is due to a couple things. The first and the most significant portion is that during budget discussions, especially with Public Works, we moved people to where they were actually working. There was a couple departments where people were charged to a department and maybe their job duties have shifted and changed, and they should really be in a different department. So one person, 75% of one person is moved from the Parks Department to cemetery. And then one part-time person who was being charged to Parks was actually working in the senior citizens, doing cleaning for senior citizens, so we moved them to the appropriate account. Again, those are both general fund accounts, so it's not something that has a total budget effect.
So there's no net gain or
There's
loss?
no net gain or loss, but you'll see that the Parks Department salaries do look lower, and I wanted to explain that. The other reason that they look lower, and they look lower before moving those people, is because last year when an employee retired, that employee's job was reclassified from a foreman to a heavy equipment operator, and the new person started at step A instead of being at the top of their steps of a higher grade. So we're seeing significant savings in that restructuring. Refuse collection, you'll see just one line item if you look at the budget detail, and that's the transfer to the refuse collection fund. That's increased by $127,000 to cover what the city's not receiving in the refuse collection fee. And I'll discuss that increase a little more when we actually get to that fund. Health insurance overall has been increased by 5%. Again, we don't have the numbers from our consultants yet, so that's just kind of an arbitrary 5%. It could be less, it could be more. The property taxes were increased to the tax cap, with a reminder that the residents will get a refund from New York State if they're STAR eligible. So any increase in property taxes, they will get back in a rebate check from the state, as long as we stay under that cap. And right here I just have the two tax caps, and also wanted to note that we had about 1/3% growth factor, which means that the city actually had some growth this year, and that was able to be included into the tax cap calculation.
Laura, quick question for you. What happens to the people that don't get this? You said the STAR exemption. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
What happens to those folks?
There was a renter's credit that was not actually included into the final budget from the state. So unless they're not living in their house, they would get the STAR credit. Does that make sense? Like, They're not paying property taxes if they're not eligible for it.
But their landlords who own the property are going to get the increase in property taxes.
Yes. Sales tax. So right now the sales tax is up by $450,000 over last year's budget. That's about 5%. If you look at this year's budget versus last year's actual, though, it's only up about 3.75%, which is consistent with the state projections. It's also very conservative considering our actual year-to-date this year, which is 12% over our prior year. The state, I did some research to see if the state was projecting any decreases in sales tax or anything along those lines, and they're not. They're projecting increases over the next couple of years. I looked at their 5-year plan. So they're still projecting increases. So right now I believe this is very conservative. And then I have landfill ROI on here is an item that I wanted to bring up, that the landfill, as we all know, isn't doing great, and removing the return on investment or increasing the rates to ourselves might be something we have to do to help balance that budget, and that would affect the general fund. Okay, so anyone have any questions on general fund before I move on?
Just, was there any breakdowns on the sales tax numbers, Doug, that you said you were going to, or couldn't you get any numbers on the breakdown of the increase of sales tax?
We did get a report, but we were having trouble deciphering it, and I know Bob's, I don't know, maybe Laura, has Bob reported to you anything?
He hasn't been able to get any farther. They said that's proprietary information. We're not going to give you any more information on it.
So we did get a report, but it's not been very helpful.
And you said the state sales tax numbers were up. Is that statewide, or is that reflection of what's happening here locally?
Statewide.
Statewide. And that doesn't, does that lead us to believe, though, if they're up statewide, not locally, or is it something that's being generated here, or is it statewide?
Well, the state's portion of sales tax is 4% of the sales from every municipality.
Uh-huh.
From whoever collects sales tax. So whatever the state's projecting is what statewide is expected to happen. So it's not it's not like just New York City or just upstate. It's what they expect statewide. And I just wanted to make sure, basically our sales tax increase has been significantly higher than the state's, which is why I used the conservative state number over our increases. Moving on to the solid waste fund. We're looking at a deficit in the solid waste fund, as I'm sure was not unexpected. If you take away the depreciation and amortization, which is a non-cash item, it's just an accounting item, we're about $1.4 million. We're still, again, I did these revenue estimates a while ago. And they'll be revised. We're working with haulers. We have a couple of contracts in place, and we're looking at increased tonnage, which will increase our revenue. This is one of those estimates that we really need a little more time on to be comfortable with the revenue piece of it. Most of the departments, if you look at the detail, are lower than they were last year, budgeted for already, in an attempt to help balance this. The closure and post-closure accruals are conservative. They're about $500,000 total. And I believe with lower tonnage, we can decrease these numbers, and that might also help balance this fund. The refuse collection fund is the garbage trucks that go around and pick up city trash. This fund is up significantly, and one of the reasons for this is, as I was saying before, there's a half of an employee who actually works specifically on the trucks and was being charged to another fund. We put him in this fund because this is where he should be. So that did increase the cost about $40,000. There's also the new enforcement officer offset by enforcement fees. And there's an increase in the workers' compensation over last year, which is significant. This increase, I got the detail for our workers' compensation premiums after the budget was passed last year. And what it showed was that a very large portion of our workers' comp premiums are for a very small number of people, and those are people who work in this fund. So the increase in the fund is partially due to a cost that we can't really control, which is our workers' compensation cost. We have to provide that to our workers, and we have to have those workers to provide this service to our citizens. Yes.
Approximately how many employees are collecting workers' comp? From this particular fund?
I can look that up, but these are premiums.
Okay.
Yeah, so this isn't payouts, it's premiums. But the premiums are high for this fund because there have been payouts in the past. Back injuries are a big one because they're lifting and twisting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Next is the power utility fund. I broke this down a little differently than the other funds so that you could see how each of the different types of electric generating facilities broke down. You can see that the landfill to gas electric plant, we're projecting approximately a very small profit. Same with the hydro plant. And then at the bottom, there's general expenses of liability insurance and depreciation and amortization. This projected loss of $750,000, if you take away the depreciation and amortization, the funds basically break even. Again, an accounting item, not an actual cash item. So what's new in the power utility fund? As recently approved, there's a half of an employee that's being split with water to work on the hydropower plants and on the pump stations. The ending budget for the hydroelectric is approximately the same as the year before. Now that we've had a year under our belt, we know what kinds of expenses we're looking for the Mill Street power plant, and it was quite a bit lower than the prior year budget expected.
By pointing out the depreciation, we're not transferring any money, of course, from the general fund to support these.
Yeah, there's a small transfer still in. Let me go back to that slide. This right here, there's about $100,000 transfer, and that's also included in the general fund as an expense. So in the landfill gas to electric plant, sorry, those are backwards. The operating supplies is up from $70,000 this year to $150,000. Last year we had this year we had a very expensive turbo repair, and there's the potential for another one. So we want to be covered for that. The fees to sell into New England are also new, and we'll only see these fees if we do see the revenue from also being able to sell into New England. Next year, you'll see that there's about $230,000 in hydroelectric sales in the budget. This is new over the current budget year. This is from Mill Street generating electricity. And then increase in the sales, not over last year's budget, but over the current actual.
And Laura, just one last question on the power utility fund.
Mm-hmm.
Are you charging are you giving credit to the refuge department or the landfill account for the gas?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you know offhand? How much that was? Because I know it changed from year to year.
Yeah, it'll be about $200,000 this year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The water and sewer funds don't have much different going on in them. You'll see that they're balanced. This number right here, this capital expenditures and reserves, this is a small surplus that we would put back into fund balance to help stabilize rates in the future. Like in the hydro plant, there's a half-time equivalent employee that's going to be working on the lower pump stations. There's a small increase in other equipment from $21,000 to $57,000 for some operating equipment. And we have seen a small decrease in water sales. we are looking into that with Wendell and trying to figure out why that is, because our water consumption was supposed to go up with the new project. Yes.
Yeah, this may be more of a question for Doug than yourself. So, but Doug, where are we with the town of Aurelius and the water rate issue?
It was headed to arbitration. Andy Fiscal was going to prosecute that. So right now we're looking for a replacement attorney.
So it's still kind of in the works.
Still outstanding, yes.
And with the addition of the water sales through Aurelius to satisfy the consent order, do you expect that to increase the water sales?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Well, we're
understand.
selling water to Aurelius, who's
yes,
selling it downstream to those in Cuga
Yeah.
because of the notice that they were given. So do you expect that to significantly increase the water sales or not?
I think it will, but not by a large amount.
Yeah, the consent order didn't really affect the whole.
Yeah, I don't know the
Lot of-
schedule for their
yeah.
pipeline to be finished. That's part of it.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thanks.
Laura, before you move on, the water fund balance, what is that currently at right now? Do you know offhand?
I'm sorry, I don't know that offhand. I can send it to you.
Please, for both water and sewer when you get them.
Lastly, the sewer fund. Again, you'll see that the small surplus going into fund balance. Not many huge changes in this fund. Our debt service is decreasing a little bit. And like water, because water and sewer are tied together, there's a decrease in consumption or sewer rents. We had an increase in other equipment from $158,000 to $271,000, and that wasn't one item. It was a variety of items that the department needs. There was a decrease in natural gas due to a decrease in usage, and I have increase in electricity here for potentially going back on NICEAG. That was determined that that wouldn't actually cause an increase in electricity costs. Does anyone have any questions on sewer fund?
I might have missed it. This past year we had a company that was teaching our staff how to run the landfill gas.
Yes.
That's been taken out of the.
No, unfortunately, what happened was they are decreasing their fee about $24,000 for the year, but they refused to provide us provide us with a contract where they just came and did large upgrades and repairs. Our staff isn't capable of that. They're only willing to do an operation and maintenance contract.
that's correct. We have the capability to operate with our own people, but we don't have the capacity to overhaul engines and do the major work. And Laura's correct. We tried to get a contract where we would operate. We could call them for the major maintenance, and they won't do that.
So what does this mean? Like, are they going to be here forever? How long are they going to be here? I mean, from my understanding, we voted on this contract, and it was for 1 year, and it was to kind of get us off
Right.
and running by ourselves. And
It's a 15-month contract. It expires in June, I think.
and so what does that mean? Will we have the capacity and the staff to run it?
No. We can run it. We can't maintain it.
So when is it going to end?
Well, if I don't know that it will. If we could find somebody cheaper that would do a separate maintenance contract for us, we could do that. But right now, they are the most capable company we have. In addition to that, the parts for Jenbacher engines are sold only by one supplier. So to get a part, you have to have the serial number of your engine, order it from this one supplier, And negotiating with them is very difficult. So again, having a bigger company engage with them has been helpful. But it's a very expensive process to maintain these engines.
That's $24,000 a month?
20,000
A month.
A month.
a month
A month.
to operate and maintain 24/7.
I wasn't kidding when I said it's the gift that keeps on taking. I mean, this is, and I know we've been trying, I mean, again, we voted on this 15-month contract with the idea that we as a city would be able to fully run this landfill gas facility by ourselves. You know, I'm at a loss for words. I hope that the New England market is going to pay for this. I hope that all the things that we're trying to do, but you know, now more than ever, you know, as we're brought into these energy, like the energy contracts come before us, and some, you know, again, come to mind the New York Prize, which starts off as this kind of auspicious, you know, it's not going to. I'm really leery, especially now, of any kind of energy project that comes this way. So, all right. Thank you for answering my question.
Oh, Councilor Zika?
Yes, regarding to the operating costs of this facility, of course, and you keep referring it to the gift that keeps on taking, and again, that project had morphed, and I explained it to you. I sent you all the documentation on how it came to be. So what the main problem was is a major component of that project was eliminated because of financial constraints. That in itself would have increased the production of power here because it would have provided an additional supply of the necessary methane gas. So the contract, or whatever you want to call this, the energy service agreement is really what it was, which was done, and the plant was built after that was signed, and I gave you all the documentation on it, was the responsible document and set the stage here. So if we can look at different ways of operating it. We don't have the expertise. We can't, as to Doug's point, the landfill gas engines, I don't care if they're Jenbachers or John Deere's or Alice or whatever. It doesn't matter what those engines are. We don't have the capability to do that work. So until we either contract with someone else that can do that may work, we have no other choice. You can't let this asset sit and do nothing. We have natural gas that's being generated by a landfill. That's a greenhouse gas. We all know what greenhouse gases do to the environment. So what we're actually doing is, this is the cost of the environment. Look at it that way. So granted, it's not good for the city, but eventually we can fix this. We need to either, like I say, determine another source for the maintenance, the heavy maintenance. At some point, when we determine that, then we can determine, or we can assume operations. Until that happens, you're between the proverbial rock and the hard place here. So what needs to happen is we need to determine what's the best strategy for operating this plant. And I believe it's a process undergoing now. So until that's complete, we really need to understand that we have no other option right now. We need to continue with this contract until we come to a point where we can assume operations and have someone else perform the major maintenance. Or we're going to have to try and figure out somehow or another where we can perform the major maintenance. And then again, you're talking some very high-level skill sets that you're going to have to pay for and may not be utilized 100% of the time. So that's best left to a contracted service. Again, the plant keeps getting I'm going to call a bad rap, and part of the big problem of this bad rap is our own fault. This plant has been mismanaged and misoperated for quite a number of years, first by its prior owner, and then by, in many ways, by our landfill gas systems that we did not properly maintain to provide the best optimum production of the gas. We're looking at that more. We're doing a better job at that. Is it perfect? Probably not, but we're doing a lot better than we were. So understand, we bought this with the understanding that we were going to lower the bleeding and understand that we weren't going to totally stop this. So until we can better manage this facility, and it's going to take a lot of effort on the city manager's part, the municipal powers agency, in a cooperative effort to determine what best way to manage this plant. Because right now we've got management that's very much lacking. I'm very disappointed. I can look at the way that this plant is managed, and if any business was managed that way, and it was a shareholder, owned by shareholders, that board of directors would be in big trouble. So we need to step up to the plate and manage this correctly, and that's where it's costing us the money, is because we don't know what we're doing right now. We have to find someone that can teach us, or else we have to learn, or we learn the hard way, which is what we're doing. Thank you.
Councilor Cuddy?
I'm just shocked that we voted last year to have a 15-month contract that is going to cost us, after it's done, an extra, it's $300,000, an extra $20,000 a month. I'm entitled to be shocked. Mm-hmm. I'm also entitled to remind the people of Auburn that we were paying $1 million a year, transferring it from our power utility fund to when it wasn't owned by us, and then we had to pay almost $5 million to purchase it. And as I was saying, it is the gift that keeps taking, and I don't think that is unfair characterization, because the people of Auburn, the taxpayer of Auburn, have paid enough, and it's just disheartening to hear that it's going to continue to cost the city so much money.
Oh, sorry, Councilor Ruzicka?
Yes. Well, I gave you all the documentation as to how that evolved and what it ended up to be. What happened, again, need I remind you, the digester was not put into place because of financial concerns. The project scope had changed, shifted. The lack of production of methane that digester would have contributed was no longer in the picture. And again, like I said, we need to run this plant. At least, I would rather lose $20,000 a month than $40,000 or $50,000 a month, or whatever. I mean, we were losing significant amounts of money now. Now it's actually showing, in fact, the Comptroller showing it's a slight gain or profit if you take away the accounting issues. So actually, the improvement has been made since we purchased this facility. Now, this facility, what I seen in the contracts, we could have purchased this a few years ago for $3.5 million and had the whole thing, 3 engines. So shame on us for not taking that opportunity back then.
All set? Councilor Cuddy?
I just want to thank Councilor Ruzicka for having read the resolution from 2009 a couple weeks ago. It was a response to my resolution, the resolution that I read from August 2007 that I still attest to getting the ball started. But in his reading a couple weeks ago, he did mention 2 actions that were taken that I went back and looked at on November 20th and November 21st of 2009. And it wasn't in 2007. It wasn't until November 20th, 2007 that they had an actual agreement. The contracts on November 20th were signed by former Mayor Lattimore and former City Manager Palish. Then on November 21st, they signed an amendment to what they signed the day before. It appears that these agreements may have been rushed to get them signed before Mayor Lattimore left office. Then on January 1st, 2008, Mike Coyle became our mayor. On March 3rd, 2008, the new council passed what was the first attempt to correct the bad agreement that City Manager Palish and Mayor Lattimore got us into in November of 2007. The resolution that Councilor Zika keeps reading was the city's second attempt to correct the November 2007 contract. Most recently, the buyout of the cogen was the city's third and final attempt to fix it. And I have every right, as I said earlier, to just be disheartened by the fact that we're still, in our attempt to fix it, paying $20,000 a month. There's no way around it. The contract was signed November 2007 is what locked us into this mess. Where we are now is that the current council has the opportunity to make it work or continue to lose money, and it looks like making it work is the same thing as losing money. The problem is that with this opportunity is the best thing we can do is to break even, and that will take many years and good luck to even break even. Every time we have to replace a turbine or negotiate a deal with NYSEG or this other company that's costing us money, we're just going to continue to lose money. The other problem with the buyout of the cogen is that we paid full price for a used project. It is the equivalent of paying for full price for a 5-year-old car. Apparently, they took the best of 3 engines with them when they left, and we are only left with 2. As I said before, the cogen is the gift that keeps taking, and the gift was from former Mayor Lattimore and City Manager Palish.
Gentlemen, as looking at this entire picture, I think we're here to discuss the budget, and this question of the operation of the cogen plant is certainly a factor that this council will be considering for a number of months and years, I'm sure. But we're off the subject of having the proposed budget presented, and I would just opine that this discussion right now is not germane to what the subject matter is that we're here for tonight. And there's plenty of opportunity that will be discussed and debated.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Is there any other discussion on the budget for tonight?
I have a question on a cogen, and I just want to, this is a very important issue because the cogeneration plant is a part of the budget discussion that we're having tonight. But I want to look for solutions on this matter, Doug, and I'd like you to really put some time in with your staff into looking at a different way of, instead of spending $240,000 a year, if there's another way, I don't know. Maybe there's a way of exploring expending $240,000 with an outside company. If there was maybe we could hire an individual, have a full-time person. That was the intent of the contract initially when we came to council and discussed it, and we passed that, is to train somebody down there to have somebody that would have the expertise and the know-how to run that facility. So I would like to look for a solution that we could come back to council with, that you can come back to council with, that we could look for a better way, a more fiscal way of not spending this kind of money and maybe going in a different area. I'm not sure of that. I don't have any expertise in those motors or how that facility runs, but I'd sure like somebody to look into it and really try to put some time and effort into that area.
We are, and everybody on staff has the same concern.
Good.
We think we spend an awful lot of money on that particular contract, and we keep looking for options and opportunities. So if we find one, we'll certainly be back in front of council with that. But so far, that's the best game in town right now, and we do need to maintain the asset and keep it operational. So we hear you, and we've considered hiring staff, but again, these are, you've seen them. They're very big, they're complicated, and if something goes wrong, it's not just an individual, it's a team of mechanics that has to come in with expertise in everything from engines to electronic control systems. So that's where we're very concerned about cutting this contract loose right now.
Have we advertised, Doug, for an individual that might be working for one of these consulting companies that go out and do that type of work and maintain this equipment?
To look. We're looking.
But if we put an ad out for somebody that we could afford to hire a full-time person and save
Oh, yeah.
considerable amount of money with this contract. So
And find a crew.
I'm just saying it needs to be looked into further. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Zika?
Yeah, on the general budget drafts, I mean, we have all had these lines in each department, which is in services. And to me, I would like to see these service lines broken out to what these services are. I'm a bit concerned because quite often during the year here, you see these services being pretty much overspent during the budget year. I'd like to understand what actual services are being bought under that line.
Councilor, I think that each department coming in to do a presentation?
Each department will be coming in to do a presentation on their budget, but the spreadsheets, the initial budget spreadsheets that I sent out, those actually do have all the detail in them for each department.
Well, what I see here is like, I'll look right at the top here, and
Oh, yeah, that's
it's only a line item for services.
right. That is the draft of all the departments rolled
Correct.
up together. But the initial set of budget spreadsheets that I sent out that each department submitted has that breakdown in it. I can re-forward that email if you need me to.
Yes, I understand it, but that was only the preliminary ones. That was a draft, correct? That's not the final.
Correct.
But it-
Okay, when we
But we
get
don't
closer
have
to
a
that,
final.
I'd like to see what we're actually buying for services.
But that is, the itemized one, the items won't change within the services, it's just the dollars, right? The one you sent us a few weeks ago, that'll stay the same.
We'll send out the final department ones when the final budget's.
Well, if you're going to lower some service, you're getting rid of something. If you're cutting that service down, you're not paying for something, and you're not getting what you're not paying for. You're not getting the full benefit of the line item of the service. So I need to understand what we're getting for that money. What actual, if we take this service line and we say, okay, I got a service line here of 4,460, where's that all going? And the final number, I'd like to see how that's on the final draft, I should say, or as we approach the final draft, I'd like to see what those are.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Comptroller, thank you so much for the work. And Doug, thank you. This is a great packet of a lot of information, and it's a good job, all the time and effort you put into it. We appreciate that, and to getting it on the website for the community to see, too. It's really helpful to see how it unfolds. Thank you.
And it's on Facebook too, right?
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, website. I'm sure we could do a billboard. We'd do it.
Thank you.
Actually, we're going to have videos, too. Yes, multimedia. We've got one more presentation. Road